In the autumn of 1891, a young schoolteacher named Eleanor Finch arrived in the small English village of Blackwood. She was 24 years old and had accepted a position teaching children at the local school. Eleanor was intelligent, practical, and did not believe in ghost stories. She preferred facts and logic. When villagers spoke about strange things, she usually smiled politely and changed the subject. She expected her new life in Blackwood to be quiet and peaceful. However, she soon learned that the village was famous for a frightening legend. At the edge of the village stood an old Victorian mansion called Blackwood Manor. The large stone house had been empty for more than 20 years. Its windows were dark, its gardens were overgrown, and no one willingly went near it after sunset. According to local stories, the last owner of the manor, a wealthy gentleman named Lord Blackwood, had disappeared without explanation one stormy night. Some people claimed his ghost still walked through the halls. Others said strange shadows moved behind the windows, even though the house was empty. Eleanor considered the stories ridiculous. Old houses often made strange sounds, and people loved creating mysteries where none existed. One rainy evening after school, Eleanor stopped at a small shop. While paying for a loaf of bread, she mentioned the manor. The shopkeeper immediately looked nervous. "You should stay away from that place," he warned. "Why?" Eleanor asked. "Because people who enter after dark never return there." "Same." Eleanor laughed softly. "I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation." The shopkeeper did not smile. "Maybe, but no one has found it." His serious expression stayed in Eleanor's mind long after she returned home. A week later, curiosity finally defeated caution. On a grey Saturday afternoon, Eleanor decided to visit the manor herself. The sky was cloudy as she followed a narrow path through the woods. Soon the enormous mansion appeared between the trees. It looked even more impressive up close. Tall towers rose above the forest and dark ivy covered much of the stone walls. The building seemed to watch her silently. Eleanor pushed open the rusty gate and walked toward the front door. To her surprise, it was unlocked. The door slowly opened with a long creaking sound. Inside, dust covered everything. Furniture stood beneath white sheets. Portraits of serious-looking people stared from the walls. Sunlight entered through dirty windows, creating long shadows across the floor. Eleanor explored room after room. Everything appeared abandoned. Yet she could not shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Eventually, she found a large library filled with old books. On a wooden desk sat a leather journal. Curious, she opened it. The journal belonged to Lord Blackwood himself. Most entries described ordinary events. However, the final pages became increasingly disturbing. Lord Blackwood wrote about hearing footsteps at night. He described seeing a dark figure standing at the end of hallways. He claimed shadows moved even when no light was present. In his final entry, written the night he disappeared, he wrote only one sentence: "It is standing outside my door." Eleanor felt a chill run through her body. The words seemed unusually desperate. Suddenly, she heard a loud noise upstairs. It sounded like a heavy object falling to the floor. Eleanor froze. The manor was supposed to be empty. For several moments, she remained completely still. Then she reminded herself that old houses often made noises. Gathering her courage, she climbed the staircase. The upper floor was darker than the rooms below. A long corridor stretched ahead of her. Several doors stood open. As Eleanor walked carefully forward, she noticed something strange. Dust covered most of the floor, but one section showed fresh footprints. Someone had recently walked there. Her heart began beating faster. "Hello?" she called. No answer came. The silence felt unnatural. She continued following the footprints until they disappeared outside a locked bedroom. Eleanor slowly pushed the door open. Inside stood an old bed, a fireplace, and a large mirror covered with dust. Nothing seemed unusual. Then she noticed another journal hidden beneath the bed. This one belonged to a servant who had lived in the manor many years ago. As she read, Eleanor discovered something disturbing. Several servants had reported seeing the same dark figure long before Lord Blackwood disappeared. They described it as a human-shaped shadow that appeared only at night. According to the journal, the figure always watched from a distance. But each time someone saw it, it appeared slightly closer than before. Eleanor suddenly felt uncomfortable. She closed the journal and looked around the room. The air seemed colder. The shadows seemed darker. Then she noticed something in the mirror. Standing behind her was a tall, dark figure. Eleanor gasped and spun around. The room was empty. Her breathing became rapid. Slowly, she looked back at the mirror. Nothing was there now. "It's just your imagination," she whispered to herself. Yet her voice sounded uncertain. As evening approached, Eleanor decided it was time to leave. She hurried downstairs and headed toward the front door. Then she stopped. The door was no longer open. Somehow it had closed. Worse, it appeared locked from the inside. Eleanor tried the handle repeatedly. It would not move. Panic began rising inside her. She searched every room for another exit. All the windows were sealed shut. Darkness slowly filled the manor. The wind howled outside. Floorboards creaked in distant rooms. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Somewhere above her, someone was walking through the house. Eleanor stood frozen. The footsteps continued. One step, then another. They seemed to be moving toward the staircase. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest. She wanted to believe there was a logical explanation, but fear was becoming impossible to ignore. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Then silence returned. For several seconds, nothing happened. Suddenly, a dark shape appeared at the end of the hallway. It was tall and completely black, darker than the surrounding shadows. Eleanor could not see a face. The figure simply stood there watching her. Every instinct told her to run. The figure took one slow step forward. Eleanor turned and sprinted through the manor. She rushed into the library and slammed the door behind her. The room seemed safer somehow. Frantically, she searched for anything that might help her escape. Then she noticed a folded piece of paper hidden inside Lord Blackwood's journal. On it was a short note. "The shadow feeds on fear. Do not run from it." Eleanor stared at the words. Outside the library, the footsteps continued approaching. She remembered every story she had heard. Everyone who encountered the shadow had become terrified. Maybe fear was exactly what it wanted. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor opened the library door. The dark figure stood at the far end of the corridor. This time she did not run. Her legs trembled, but she remained standing. The shadow seemed to hesitate. Slowly, Eleanor stepped forward. The figure remained motionless. Another step, then another. As she approached, the shape began fading. Its outline became less distinct. Suddenly Eleanor understood. The shadow grew stronger when people feared it. Without fear, it had no power. Gathering every bit of courage she possessed, Eleanor walked directly toward it. The figure dissolved into darkness and disappeared completely. At that exact moment, the front door downstairs swung open. Fresh air rushed through the manor. The oppressive feeling vanished instantly. The house became silent once more. Eleanor quickly left Blackwood Manor and returned to the village. The next morning, she told no one exactly what had happened. Most people would never believe her anyway. Yet from that day forward, reports of the shadow stopped completely. Years later, Blackwood Manor was renovated and reopened. Visitors explored its halls without experiencing anything unusual. As for Eleanor, she never forgot that terrifying night. She learned that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward even when fear is standing directly in front of you. And sometimes, the darkest shadows disappear the moment you refuse to run from them.